Hey everybody, Knick-Knack here, back again for another video. Now as you see the title down below, this is going to be a video response to Mr. ballinnick1982. Now ballinnick has been a YouTuber that I've been a huge fan of for a while now. I really love how he goes into detail into games he's played, what his interests are. I really love his music talk sometimes, and also I really love his personal stories. Just hearing about that chocolate breast milk and putting stuff on fire was just really nice to listen to. If you're watching this, Nick, please do us a big favor and make an episode 3 of I Can't Believe I Did That. But anyway, the video response that I'm making is where he talked about some of these games that people hated yet he liked. And I always wanted to do a video response on this sort of topic, but there were some people or whatnot who has never made one. And fortunately ballinnick did, and I'm here to respond to it. Now I could have made one just by myself, but I love making video responses, getting my opinion heard and whatnot. But anyway, enough of the babbling, let's start. Now the first few games I've compiled in my big ass list are games that, first I'm gonna go with the games that I don't own. So anyway, let's start with the first game right now. The first game I want to talk about is Guys, God Bless the Ring. Now for those who remember this game, they might have noticed that this was advertised as a Final Fantasy fighting game because Cloud, Sephiroth, and Tifa were in it, as well as other characters. And that kind of led people to want to play it. But from what I've heard from those same people, most of them tended to hate it because the quest mode or the single player content or multiplayer content was kind of lame. The Final Fantasy characters were an afterthought. The gameplay was kind of bad because you could just spam moves and the characters roll around. And if I'm not mistaken, or I'm gonna repeat myself again, quest mode was pretty bad. But despite that, I personally enjoyed it. As a guy who was unable to buy a whole bunch of games back then, I really enjoyed my time with it. And for the most part, I really loved the gameplay. And the content, despite bad, there was plenty of. And I really liked that in my games back then. And because of that, I consider it to be one of my favorite fighting games of all time. So yeah, Guys, despite the negative stuff it gets, I however loved it. The next game I want to talk about is a series of games, and that's games after Mortal Kombat 4. So in other words, games like Mortal Kombat Deception, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and Mortal Kombat Armageddon I personally loved. And the reason why I think these games get a whole lot of hate is because the graphics were ugly and the combat was pretty stiff and boring maybe. But of course, this is the reason why I love this game applied to Guys as well, in the sense that I was unable to buy a whole bunch of games, and from those games I played when I grew up, for the most part, I really enjoyed them. I just loved how content driven it was, the stuff you can unlock, the story mode or campaigns in arcade were plentiful, and if you played Armageddon, it had a pretty decent creative fighter. Also, another thing why I personally liked it is because of the character designs. Now, some of you might think the character designs are crap, but I personally love these character designs in those types of games, like those Mortal Kombat games. But yeah, despite the mediocre gameplay and the bad graphics, I for the most part love these Mortal Kombat games. The next game I want to talk about is another fighting game, and that's SNK Chaos. Now before I start talking about this list is not going to be only fighters, okay? So for those who are like looking for an RPG or a racing game or an action game, be patient, okay? But anyway, SNK Chaos seems to get a lot of criticism or hate from people, mainly because the graphics and sound was outdated. It was like one-on-one fighting compared to the other games. And I think the combat didn't like compare to games of that year or like of that generation. But despite those, however, I personally love this game for plenty of reasons. The first reason, the combat was way fluid compared to Capcom vs. SNK's 1 and 2. The second reason is I really love the music. Third reason, the character interactions in the beginning of the fights were really nice. And the fourth and final reason is because this game felt more on the lines of a Capcom vs. game than Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2 were. Like, I'm just gonna go on a quick rant here, but for those who have played Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2, have you noticed that Capcom's side of the roster isn't Capcom, but Street Fighter characters with maybe like one or two Darkstalkers and Final Fight characters? Like, if you ask me, that's kind of like false advertising. But other than that, the Capcom vs. SNK series was great in general, and SNK Chaos has got to be my favorite of the games. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that game. The next game I want to talk about is Dantes Inferno. I'm assuming this game gets a whole lot of hate, mainly because it's a God of War ripoff, and the character just keeps screaming Beatrice all the time. When I played it, I don't think like the character screamed Beatrice all the time, and the combat for the most part was really decent, and I also like the story and the concept of going through hell, like absolving and punishing these people who are trapped in hell, and like fighting all these creatures and whatnot, just trying to save Dante, like trying to save his lover. I really like that. And that's all I really have to say about it. Despite the hate it gets for it, I was one of the few who actually liked this game. The next game I'm going to talk about is DMC Devil May Cry. Now, of course, everybody knows the hate this game gets, mainly because of Fuck Ninja Theory, with what they did with the design of the character, and the gameplay being 30 frames per second, and the other stuff Ninja Theory has done. But for the most part, when I rented this game, I was pleasantly surprised with it, to the point that it became my fourth favorite game of 2013. Like, although it's like, doesn't compare with Devil May Cry 1 and 3, this was enjoyable for the most part, because I really loved the graphics. The story for a Devil May Cry game was really great. Music was nice, and the combat was pretty easy and fun to get into. So yeah, Devil May Cry, DMC. I personally would say that you guys should play it, because it was that good for me. Okay, so those were games that I don't own or have with me right now. Next is a pile of games that I do own. So let's start with the pile with Soul Calibur 3. Now, I think this game gets a whole lot of hate, mainly because there was no online mode. It was PS2 exclusive, and they changed the character movesets and whatnot. But for most part, this was a really good Soul Calibur game, and I enjoyed the content with the local single player modes that got, such as the story mode or arcade mode, and that little tower defense thing. And of course the character creation. This was the first one to have it, and I really thought was a good one for most part. And yeah, I think this is a good Soul Calibur game. And think about it, compare this to 4 and 5. This game is shits on those two. So yeah, Soul Calibur 3. It's not the best of the Soul Calibur series, but kicks the ass out 5. Okay, the next game I'm going to talk about is a game that people either seem to love or hate. There's a whole bunch of people I know that hate this game, yet there's a whole bunch of people I know who actually enjoy this game. And that game, of course, is Final Fantasy X. Now, I am in the love of this game. I consider this to be one of my favorite Final Fantasies of all time. And as for people who hate it, they of course hate it because this character is a piece of crap. The linearity of the game, the ending, Blitzball was completely pointless. Some of the characters were crap, the bad voice acting. I could care less about all those things. And I personally like that stuff for what this game has to offer. I really love the gameplay. I really love the characters. Well, it's mainly Auron. The other characters were okay. I really love the music. And Blitzball, I personally played the fuck out of. And as for linearity, it was not that bad. If you compare this to 13, this linearity is really nothing. It's pretty open world if you ask me. But yeah, for the most part, I'm the few who actually like this game. So yeah, Final Fantasy X. The next game I'm going to talk about is a whole series of games. And that's the Dynasty Warriors games. Now for what I have here, I have Warriors Orochi, which is a crossover of Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, all those Muso type of games. People of course hate this because the bad voice acting and the repetitive nature. However, I personally love the fuck out of these games, mainly because they're just fun and mind-numbing. All you just could do is hack through waves and hordes of stupid enemies and stupid AI armies. And for the most part, I found that really fun. So yeah, this is just a great time waster game that you could shut your mind off with. Or the series in general. Okay, the next game I'm gonna talk about is one of the first games I've ever got for my PS2, and the game I definitely grew up with during my childhood, and that's The Simpsons Road Rage. Now, for this, understand that some people don't have the money or lost the case, and unlike some people, I just rather have the game and play it. I don't care about manuals or cover art, even though they kinda look ugly. But anyway, The Simpsons Road Rage, I think people hate this game because the graphics were pretty ugly. It was a Crazy Taxi ripoff. The world wasn't that big. And the loading times in this game were annoying as fuck. It loaded like a motherfucker. But Despite those problems, I really enjoyed this game. Heck, I think I even liked it more than Crazy Taxi. Because they're exploring the town of Springfield was really nice. It had a free mode, which all you could just do was drive around the area. It had a story mode, which for most part I really liked. The replayability was high because of the worlds you can explore and the characters you can pick, which are plenty. And of course, it has multiplayer, something that Crazy Taxi didn't even have up until the PSP port. So yeah, that's all I have to say about Simpsons Road Rage. I personally liked it even more than Crazy Taxi. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game that I think gets bashed unfairly, and that's Anarchy Reigns. Now, people shit on this game because compared to other platinum titles like Bayonetta and Vanquish, this is crap. The single player mode is convoluted and trash. The graphics are outdated and all that kind of stuff. These people should first think of the main thing about this game. It was released at $30. So for a $30 game, what were you expecting? A AAA title? Because the price this was released at, you guys should judge it as a $30 title and not a AAA or $60 title. And for $30, this game for most part was pretty damn good. Like, despite the repetitive combat, it actually worked and wasn't like that bad. The mission structure was okay. The story mode for this game actually wasn't like that bad, and it was pretty lengthy for a $30 title. The multiplayer modes were amazing because not only like were you able to play with people online, but there were bots. Also, speaking of multiplayer, there were like plenty of multiplayer modes that include like death matches, free-for-alls, playing a ball game, and whatnot. But personally, the thing that like makes this game just so freaking amazing in my eyes is the soundtrack. If you have never listened to a soundtrack for this game, I don't know what rock you're living under, because the soundtrack of this game is just fucking amazing. It's pretty much underground hip-hop and some good shit. Like, there's a reason why I put this as my favorite soundtrack of 2013. Way more than stuff like Ni no Kuni or Blood Dragon. It's because this game's soundtrack is that amazing. Other than that, it's a really good game. And because you could like get this for cheap, I recommend buying it. So yeah, Anarchy Reigns. Sorry that I'm rambling too much on it. The next game I'm going to talk about is a game that everybody shits on, or mostly near everybody, not because of the game itself, but because of the business practices that the company made towards this game. And most of you already know what I'm talking about. Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Now, of course, everybody knows that infamous, controversial on this DLC, and because of that, people instantly dismiss the game as shit. Like, just look at the Metacritic scores for this game, the user reviews. It's like near the 2s and the 3s because of that. As well as a couple of other problems, such as the gem system and the timer and the move inputs and whatnot. But, like, gosh, man. 3s and 4s over something you should just not pay for. And, like, it's not like they're holding a gun to your head and saying, pay for these damn characters. you guys have an option to pay for his characters or not. But anyway, besides that, if you just ignore that on this DLC crap, personally, I don't think it's a bad game as much as people say. I mean, it's playable, and I've played worse fighting games than this. I mean, for the most part, the content for the game is pretty good. The opening for the game is really great for the most part. The type of multiplayer modes such as like Scramble and just team battles of 4 people is really good. I think I already said the single player modes like Arcade and the tutorials are really great. And for the most part, the Tekken characters in this game have actually like fit pretty well, and they were like well made or crafted. So for the most part, I don't think it's that bad of a game as much as people say, as I'm saying again. Also, in terms of the Mega Man thing, yeah, I know, I understand, that's another problem, but hey, Capcom is losing money, so that's some good news, right? But yeah, Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I personally liked it. It's not as bad as people say, and it's like one of my favorite games of 2012. And the last game on this list is a game that I've been currently getting into a whole bunch. Like, I think I'm almost done with this game, and I just can't wait till I finish it. And that's Project Cross Zone. Now, of course, this game gets a whole lot of hate for 2 reasons. 1, the story is shit, and 2, it gets extremely repetitive and annoying, and it's pretty much a chore to play later on. But, however, despite all that, I personally like it, mainly for a couple of reasons. As I'm gonna say again, like which I mentioned in an earlier countdown or vid, I really love this game because I just love the character interactions between the 3 worlds and 3 companies. I really love the linearity of this, and this to me is just an easy to pick up and play game. Like, I'm going to school right now, and it's kinda hard to get into RPGs, but because of this and this linearity and bad story, it's just an easy game for me to play and just immerse myself into. And that's why I love this game. I completely understand, however, of course, why this game gets shitted on. But other than that, I like it, as I'm saying again. And also, just look at that cool stuff you get for buying it day 1. So, those were the games that I personally like that people hate. Sorry, that's a pretty long list. And, yeah. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. Take it easy. And until next video. And thank you, Mr. Ballinnick, for making this video.